Hey guys, Thomas Cecilia Jr. here, aka Mustache Tom. Yes, back with another movie review. I know in Ready Player One I did say, if you did watch that review, that might have been my last movie review. Uh, Clearly I was feeling very down at that point in time, and based on what I was seeing when I was going to see that movie, I was just like, oh, I can't keep up with all that. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to keep going if I can. I managed to see this movie as well, A Wrinkle in Time. I know this is super late as far as reviews are concerned. Well, it's more of a rant, and not particular for a Disney movie. It's not a particularly strong one at all. But with that being said, here we go. So we see this girl Meg, who's all about doing the science stuff. Based on the naming of this, I thought she was adopted into this family that we see here, or her father was someone who came into her life afterwards, so she always refers to her father in that way. Anyways, she's given some sort of gift, and then it's like this little paper folder thing that tells her something. No, I don't really remember what it was, but anyways, afterwards, 4 years pass, and at first that was a bit unclear, but they do mention that specifically a little later on. So she talks to her brother Charles, and and throughout the entire movie, she does always refer to him as Charles, which is a little bit weird, but nonetheless. They are both hearing news about NASA, and this music afterwards starts playing up, and it's a little distracting. And then we see these really lame bullies, just like, oh, we're going to mock you. And then they want her to disappear as well, which is a bit more of a petty thing I would expect to see from a bully, but the first part of that was just like, really? Anyway. So afterwards, Charles talks with Meg through like they're at school, so she's like getting a little embarrassed, and then one of the bullies talks to her, uh, so she like throws a ball at that student's face. So Principal James talks to her, and he's all like, "You can't keep using your dad as a defense." And she never really stands up for her reasoning. She just kind of goes on about how she wants him back and stuff like that. So when they return home, Charles suddenly calls, I believe her name was Mrs. What's It. So she comes into the movie. She's the one on the left side of the poster here. She just sort of enters into the movie. Now I heard that there is a book version of this, so I don't know if that's like how she's introduced, but she sort of just comes into the film and tells them about this tesseract that their father was building. So some boy named Calvin talks to Meg afterwards. And I'm just gonna say this now. Uh, I think I have seen some of the other reviews for this movie, and I think everyone agrees that this Calvin character, or the actor doing the character, is really weird. Um, Also, sort of just comes out of nowhere. His lines are really written in an odd way. His performance is even more so odd. It doesn't feel like it fits this movie at all. Like, he just sort of enters into it even more so. So they meet up with the second witch. I forgot what their term was for these ladies, but I'm just gonna refer to them as witches because I don't remember what they were. She was Miss Who though, and she takes lines from other people and then gives them credit, and that's her entire most of her character anyway. So Charles like has a plan about what he's trying to accomplish here, because he's the one who somehow contacted all these ladies, even though later on in the movie they completely throw that out to say it was the father that did it. I don't know. So that's a bit. I don't know which way it was supposed to go. So we see a bit of the father who's talking about dimensions to other galaxies and so on and so forth. Space stuff, generally. And we see that he was also onto something as well. And he's talking with the mother about needing to be more than just right. They needed something more than just that. We then find out that the bully I mentioned earlier, I didn't write her name earlier because I didn't catch it the first time, but her name is Veronica, and she also happens to be their neighbor who just sort of just stands there watching them, trying to get info about what to make fun of the main character for. So Miss What's-It returns, and Miss Who also returns as well, and they're joined then by Miss Witch, which is played by Oprah Winfrey. She appears and she's like super big, and they do this she does this via teleportation, so now there's this sort of more whimsical aspect that they are all seeing here at once. Charles comes out and says, this is what's going on, and this is what again, that confusion between whether it was him or the father that did it, whatever. So anyways, Miss Witch tells them that they got the call, and that's when the main character is like, but my father did it, right? And again, that's what causes that confusion for me. I don't know which one it was. Anyway. So, they go with them, Charles, Meg, and yes, including Calvin as well, to this grassland. And they spend some time just running around, padding the movie out, it feels like at this point in time. We see that Miss What's-It is the one that has the most doubts about Meg. And they're trying to look for where the father is in this location. So they start talking to the plants, which tell them where he was heading anyway. So they go to spend some time flying with Mrs. What's-It as she transforms into this green plant thing that looks kind of familiar, but I can't place what movie it reminds me of. It was some animated movie, but the face particularly reminded me of some animated film about like these leaf warriors, and I just don't remember the movie. Anyway, that's not the point. Again, it definitely feels like more padding in this part of the movie. It's like unnecessary fluff. There isn't really much happening. They're just going, woohoo, yeah, fun! And then the darkness comes, and the darkness had some other name. It was like, they start calling it, but they had another name for it, and I didn't even bother writing that name down. It was like some weird name. So I'll just call it, for simplicity's sake, I'll simply just call it the darkness. I think that is the easiest way to go about doing this part of the review, honestly. So, from there, you had the whole part where she's like, oh, we gotta go back because of the darkness. So they go to see this seer character. So they return down to their sizes, and they go to Orion, this other planet. And from there, we kind of go from planet to planet, or location to location, pretty quickly. But anyway, and the main, which one? Miss Witch. That's she's like talking to Meg Solo here, and she mentions how the universe's alignment all came together to eventually make this character, because she was doubtful about being able to find her father and all this stuff up until this point, and that gave her enough confidence to keep moving forward. So that was a nice little bit, I'll admit. So anyways, they enter this little cave-like place, and they see this man. He's like a happy guy played by Zach Galifianakis. Um, so they're all trying to find this peace or happiness in this moment, and she's having, the main character Meg is having the most difficulty. Miss Witch holds her hand to show her that the darkness is like this thing that travels from the space world into our world and it infects people one by one, changes them, so on and so forth. So this makes it just as hard for her to. And another song ruins the moment. Like the song just starts playing and it feels very unnecessary. It pads the movie out some more, and we don't really get anything from the characters. Again, just unnecessary music. So they name off some places where he could have gone. The darkness is mentioned as well. So, anyways, Meg, Calvin, and Charles get sent, and the other three witches, I guess they are, start fading away. But before they start to vanish, one of them gives her an actual gift, while the other two give her words of encouragement. Mrs. Whatsit gives her faults, which does come into play. Like she remembers that's what she said, and then she's able to do something, and I'll get to that in a bit. And then Oprah's character is just like, stick together. It's like, oh really? And what happens immediately after? Of course, they get separated. So yes, Charles gets sent away, and then Meg and Calvin have to run in as this forest appears in this like tornado dust cloud thing happens, and they're running from it. They run up to this wall. Meg figures up that they can use it by going inside this tree. They go up over the wall, and Calvin once again having this weird dialogue mentioning how he likes her hair, and he says this like, I want to say either 2 or 3 times in the movie. It's just, that is really all that there is for this character to say at this moment, and it's just so, it just doesn't feel real. And I know it's supposed to be like some more of a fantasy movie, but I think, again, I'm not even sure, because they don't end. The two characters technically don't end up together. They don't like share a kiss or anything of that nature, or they don't say they love each other or anything of that nature. They do hold hands, which I guess is suggests that they were gonna end up together or something. I don't know, but point being is that it doesn't even feel like a good friendship at all. Like it doesn't feel believable in that sense. And again, it just sort of feels like Calvin's just sort of in this movie for whatever reason. So yes, they get sent up and they see Charles again, but they were separated, and the main character doesn't even remember what she was taught just a few moments ago. Even though it technically is still Charles, there was something there. Even from that point, it did feel like there was something a little bit off about the character, even at that point for me anyway. So they suddenly get transported to this area where a bunch of kids are bouncing balls in unison. And then these women, their mothers come out and bring them all in at the same time, and then one of them talks to them, trying to lure them into the house, one of the houses. The scene is sort of pointless, honestly. Like, I think I kind of understand what they were going for. Like, oh, it's a trap, like, don't go inside. But honestly, I think the scene would have been better if they had gone inside just to see what would happen and then leave. Like, it just feels like it's so rushed that the scene seemed, again, it just sort of seems pointless. Instead, they end up appearing at a beach, and more music starts playing, unnecessary music. And the beach is filled with a bunch of characters. They made a character who's simply known as Red, and Charles stops them. And this is the point where we definitively know. I mean, I already knew since we saw him again when he came back, but if that wasn't a clear enough sign, we see Charles clearly stop them and say he's gonna go with this Red character. And at this point, as I mentioned, Meg does hold Calvin's hand, like if that was to interpret that they were like they were gonna end up together again. I don't know. So Charles is now connected to the darkness, and more music starts playing. Um. Oh, sorry, but I mean they do follow Charles, and then they end up in this like white room, and we see that Charles is clearly again being more and more controlled by the darkness, and then she like finds these invisible stairs. She enters this red room, sees her dad, they step out, and then Charles just drops them, now playing the villain at this point in time. He stomps them down. He says that he wants Meg to fall into this darkness as well, and she does go into it, like the location anyway. So he brings her to this dark tree place. This is the best way I can describe it anyway. Then he like shows her this better version of herself. That's just dressed differently and her hair is down, and that's really about the only difference I could notice anyway. But while that's going on, she's trying her best to get to him afterwards. So she remembers the fault line from earlier, like what her faults are, and she mentions them, and then she gets whipped around by these tree things. These also could be interpreted by tentacle things, so it's. But eventually, yes, Charles is snapped out of it. The light shines through. The three witches tell her that they want her to be this teleporter, or whatever they call it, the Tesser, I believe it's called. So they return home. They see that their father's there. They hug the father. Veronica, I believe her name was the bully, the one that was just watching them. Yeah, she just waves. I was like, yeah, and just weird. Um, so they meet the mother, and then the father and wife reunite. They give their little kiss moment. They do have their kiss. Calvin briefly mentions at some point in the movie, like, he had his issues with his dad, which again never really comes up except for the visions that we see through Meg's perspective. But again, it never really goes anywhere, and then he's all suddenly, yeah, I'm gonna talk to my dad. So even his resolution just seems to come out of nowhere. It doesn't feel like there's any in between those moments. So again, just very faulty execution there. Anyways, he hugs Meg. Again, I don't know if that's supposed to imply anything. And then Meg looks up when she's then alone, and then she says her thank yous to the three witches. And that is A Wrinkle in Time. It has quite a few issues. Just from some of the characters, we have Calvin, his character just feels unnecessary. Um, I think the kid did a pretty good job. Is he starts off pretty okay, and then he has to play the villain role. And I think again, I think he does okay enough for a child actor. Um, I think it's convincing enough anyway. Um, and the main character Meg, she does a really good job. Definitely, she definitely does the best job with what she's given. And this is a character that's supposed to feel out of place, and I don't think they did a good enough job representing that. They only had like these two really like moments of like, oh, the brother's talking to her, ha ha ha, laugh at her, I guess. And then there was the whole dad thing, like her dad's missing, so laugh at her because her dad's missing, and that's the only reason she's even being bullied. Um, and even the witch characters, like their need to disappear at some point in the movie and then come back. I don't understand why they needed to disappear. Like apparently they were getting weaker, but I don't understand why that was happening. Like the darkness, I don't think the darkness was affecting them, and if it was, that wasn't really made clear at all. Like I don't understand what was happening in that moment. So there's that. Um, there's there are scenes that just feel kind of pointless, like that scene where they're in the cul-de-sac like area. That's the best way I can describe it. With the kids bouncing the balls, like I don't understand what the point of that scene even was. I've heard other reviewers talk about the book and how that there's something a bit extended about it. Again, I would have loved to have seen them go in the house to at least get more insight about what was actually happening. Because again, it's very unclear. Again, I was starting to get a little bit unsettled by it because it's like just so weird. But again, it doesn't lead anywhere. It doesn't do anything except to just be there. So again, it just feels so cut off a lot of the time, and yeah. So I'm gonna give this movie either a 3 or 4 out of 10. Definitely, not a very strong adaptation. I don't even know if the book's all that good. But even as a movie in general, I don't think it's very good. There's definitely quite a few scenes here that aren't fleshed out. We have one character that just doesn't feel like he belongs. Even the main character's plight in the movie doesn't seem like it's built up enough. You have the father character who has a really messed up moment where he like leaves his son because he was still in the darkness, and it's like, wow, really? You just gonna leave him like that? Okay, well, jeez, man. And I don't know if like the witches' like appearances were supposed to be more something. They just feel like they're just in the movie. I mean, it feels a little bit more explained than even Calvin as a character, so I guess I'll give it that much. But again, that's not saying too much at all. But yeah, that is my review of A Wrinkle in Time. And if you enjoyed this little rant, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. So also make sure to check out that link in the description, and I'll head you over to my Patreon page, and any donation is greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye bye!